Welcome to 20 Minutes of Clarity.
I'm Jason Noble, and with me today I have Andy Merchant. And in today's episode, we're going to be exploring the foundations of protected income, specifically around Social Security and pensions. We'll break down what you need to know about each and delve into the decisions that are involved in making the most out of these benefits. I think we just go ahead and get started with Social Security, Andy. It was established back in 1935. It's a program funded through payroll taxes designed to provide retirees disability income as well for those who can't work, but then families of retired, disabled, or deceased workers. But that's the baseline of what Social Security is, right? Mm-hmm. But let's go into why is Social Security identified as protected income, and then we'll go right into the conversation over some of the considerations that you need to make when it comes into claiming Social Security.
Yeah, no, Social Security is like our most common question, right? It's when people come in, when do I start? What does it mean? There's so many questions around Social Security. And as we talked last week on our last podcast, when we were just talking about the intro to some of these great topics we're going to cover for protected income, I just want to remind everybody, protected income is really just designed to be where risk is transferred to another party in order to provide that cash flow or that income. So Social Security, have you been putting money into it? Yeah, it's been withheld from your paychecks all these years and contributed into. But it's just a big, giant pocket of money. And now you need to figure out how to maximize it and optimize it in the most efficient way. So I'm excited to dive into to really just some of the key things that we look for with Social Security. But before we can talk about strategy, is with everything we do on this podcast, is we talk about ways to simplify the decision-making around it. And this is one of the big ones. And so I know, Jason, we'll go into a little high-level conversation around it, but it always starts with two key measurables, and that's portfolio reliance, which we talked a lot about in multiple podcasts. I know we visited on this topic, but portfolio reliance plus withdrawal rate are really our leading indicators into determining what is the most optimal strategy for taking Social Security. So I'm excited to jump into that conversation, and I really want to kick it to you, Jace, because you are the portfolio reliance king. I know that if all of our loyal followers that have been on this YouTube have heard this, or this podcast have heard this multiple times. But for the new listeners that we pick up every single week, maybe just give a high level of portfolio reliance. I'll tie in a little bit of withdrawal rate, and we'll go into strategies.
So portfolio reliance ratio is really going into, okay, so let's say you need $10,000 a month to live the life you want to live and do the things you want to do. Well, if you have $5,000 coming in per month through repeatable, reliable income sources, let's say through Social Security and maybe a pension, okay, that's $5,000 a month. Well, now your portfolio reliance ratio is 50%. Right? Because half of what you spend is coming in from these sources. So what that means is if you have a high withdrawal ratio, which Andy's going to talk about here in a moment, means that you are subject to a lot of volatility risk. It means that market pulls back, you're feeling it. Like you have a hard time looking at the market. You put your head in the sand. It could cause you to even consider going back to work, depending on the situation that you're in. So this is a pretty important topic. Now let's say your portfolio reliance ratio is 50%, just like I used in that example, but your withdrawal rate is really low. Well, see, it's not as big of a concern now. So these are two important factors that come into play. Andy, what is the withdrawal rate and how does that factor in?
Yeah. Where I tie it in is it's not an either or. Traditional mindset that a lot of advisors will use is they'll present a safe withdrawal rate, or take the old, probably a little bit outdated 4% of your portfolio assets. Well, that works great if you have a lot of assets, right? But we're speaking to you right now, those that are out there that are like, well, I don't have a lot of assets. I got a big pension plan, or I don't have a lot of living expenses. So when we start to think about withdrawal rate, we try to customize the withdrawal rate. So if you really think about what Jason has said, and Jason, more of a conversational piece, if you have a low sustainable withdrawal rate, meaning that, or I'm sorry, a low portfolio reliance rate, So you don't need to rely on that nest egg you built. You can afford to have a little bit more aggressive withdrawal rate, right? If you have a really, because to handle that volatility. Now,
Yeah, I mean, if you're withdrawing, let's say just 10% of like your income expenses, like what you're spending, you only need 10% of that to be covered from the portfolio. So you have 90% covering it coming in from other sources. If your withdrawal rate is, let's say, 3%, 4%, that's okay. I mean, that's not going to create a whole lot of consternation and concern. However, if your portfolio reliance rate is 20%, portfolio reliance ratio, so you have, I'm sorry, like 80%. So 80% of your expenses are coming in off your portfolio and you have a 7% withdrawal rate, you better be doing that over a very short period of time, or you're going to run the risk of running out of money. And this is based off of statistical analysis on a rolling 30-year period of time, all the way back from the 1900s to where we are today. It's called the max withdrawal rate. The rule of 4% is what it came out of as in the mid 1990s. However, in the early 2000s, they actually increased that number up to 4.5%. But the problem with that number, Andy, on the withdrawal rate of the target withdrawal rate is it was 4.5% every single year based off of your initial balance of retirement. And so, like, if you have $1 million portfolio and you're withdrawing $45,000 a year, well, that doesn't count for inflation. I don't have to remind anyone watching and listening right now, there's a thing called inflation. It doesn't count for that. It also doesn't account for, I don't know, life happening where you're going to withdraw more money in certain years because of things that come up. So it's a guideline that I may use on the back of a napkin if someone is like really coming after me at a social event. Like, oh, you're a financial advisor? Hey, let me show you what's going on here, this and that. Can I withdraw? Can I retire? And I'm like, well, okay, let me just use a baseline number. But that's all it is. I have to factor in with Andy, like all these other factors that come in to make this decision. I think we move the conversation forward now into Social Security claiming. I mean, there's so many things that need to be accounted for. Are you married? If you are, was there one spouse that had way more income than the other spouse over the years? I know Rachel and I are be facing this as we go through, because, you know, when she was going to go back to work after having Avery, the company disbanded. And I tell Rachel all the time, well, they couldn't keep the company going without you, right? So she decided not to go back to work and to be in the workforce and had a full-time obligation to the family. But we're going to have that different income ratios, right? So there's things that need to be considered. Delaying to earn more pay, and, you know, the Social Security waiting game comes into play. But also comes into play in that scenario a spousal benefit. Now, this spousal benefit is Rachel will be able to get up to 50% of my benefit if she waits till full retirement age. Now, her full retirement age right now is 67, but that's probably going to change. So that's more money that's going to be coming into the system because Rachel waited till full retirement age to get her benefit so then she could get the spousal benefit. And that's missed by a lot of people out there. And if Rachel took it at 62 as soon as she could, she wouldn't get up to 50% of mine. She would get up to 35% of mine. So by her waiting, playing that Social Security waiting game, especially on a spousal benefit, really comes into play, right? Now, what if the couple I'm working with in a different scenario, they have a very low portfolio withdrawal rate, and they have their portfolio reliance ratio is also low, right? They have like a 10% portfolio reliance rate, and they're 62. I'll take the Social Security early. Just take it early. Get the money coming in. It will lower your withdrawal rate even more. Like it just as long as the conversation goes, hey, you're not going back to work, right? Or you're done, right? Kind of thing. And the other time I would have someone take Social Security earlier is if they have pre-existing medical condition, if there's family genealogy coming into play, right? Where it's like, no, like we tend to us noble men, we tend to die, right? I hear stuff like that. That comes into play. Maybe we don't take it as early as 62. We wait a little bit longer, but then we do typically take it before full retirement age. But something I do is every single year from 62 all the way through 70 is I run a what if scenario. What if we take it this year or wait? And I show that. So we make a better informed decision together by going through the numbers to seeing what it looks like. And I don't know if you do the break-even analysis, Andy. Is that something that you incorporate as well?
I mean, at times, I know we've heard it, and I think we'll hit on it, but it comes down to a break-even analysis is really good for making the decision of how long you have to get to, right? To in order for the decision to be early. But the way I've always looked at it, I loved your perspective, so that our listeners and viewers can get a sense of how two different advisors, same mindset, approach things. It's like, it comes down to what your need is. You nailed it on the head there, Jason. If you need money and you need cash flow because you have a health event or you had to retire earlier, break-even analysis is out the window, right? Maybe you get healthier and you live longer and you get to there. I mean, we have no certain in the future. So for me and how I approach it, I'm really more about getting into the specific needs of the client, right? And what your needs are. I use 3 S's in our things. It's like, what's your start date, right? We review a lot of things you just hit on, right? When should we start it? What makes sense? Common question always missed is I want to retire early, but I end up wanting to go back to work. Then you kind of disrupt the plan. But talk about start date based on what the long-term picture is. Then we look at it and say, well, what's our spousal benefit options? We have to do, and keep in mind, we have to do all of this stuff ahead of time. So the second S is spousal benefits. We have to look at it. Did the, every household, it seems like, maybe there's 2 working members, maybe there's primary worker and a secondary worker. Then there's a lot of them that maybe there's a primary worker and the spouse stayed home and raised the children, right? And they don't have the earning credits, right? So you don't really know what those strategies are. So you have to talk about spousal benefits. And then the third S is survivor, your survivor benefits. And we talk about that because if you start early, and and I'll connect the dots here, right, Jason, for us, but if you start early, what you've done is you've locked in that survivor benefit based on whatever your rate is. So we got to be careful on, if you don't have a lot of assets that would transfer and you have a big protected income bucket of pensions and Social Security possibly, you have to ask yourself, what is my survivor going to get if I'm no longer here, right? Because even if you get Social Security, you're going to lose some income, right? If we're both on there, take a scenario, 2 spouses taking $3,000 a month in benefits. We'll keep it real simple because most of you might be listening, driving, watching, but that's $6,000 a month, right? Something happens to one of the members, your income automatically goes from $6,000 to $3,000. Now, if you're like my household, I'm the spender. I probably need the full $6,000, all the support my wife would bring to the table. She's not, so she'd be fine with just half of it. But I wouldn't be because it didn't change our spending habits. So the 3 S's, you have to have in a proactive plan.
Let's go back. Why do you say from 6,000 down to 3,000? Why did you say that?
Well, so why I say that is that if me and Ange are both getting 3,000 and Ange passes away, I'm going to pick on her today. It is her birthday, so I have to give her. Then her benefit is gone. It's
okay. So let's say you're getting 4,000, she's getting 2,000. And if she passes away, then, because I'm picking on her too, happy birthday, by the way, Ange. That means that you continue getting your 4,000. You just lose the 2,000 that she was getting. Yes. However, if you passed away, she would lose her 2,000 and get your 4,000 as the third S, being a survivor benefit.
Yeah, so she gets a pay raise. Well,
yeah.
For her own
well,
benefit,
this just goes back to maxing out your golden years, unlocking the secrets of smart Social Security claimant approaches. It just emphasizes the importance of like a strategic decision making in maximizing your Social Security benefits specifically towards your situation or you and your spouse's situation. This is so important. It's not just about how much you're going to get back. It's how does this all play out from other things that are going on within your personal finances.
Yes.
Now, I think we got to touch on pensions now, right? Due to timing. When we look at pensions, it's pension tension, man. You got to choose wisely and retire nicely, right? Yeah. It just highlights the critical choices involved in pension plans and the impact that they have on retirement comfort. again, this comes into, there's a lot of jargon that comes into play. Do you take the lump sum, take all of that full amount up front, or do you take the pension, having that money paid out over time? But then if it's paid out over time under the pension, what about any survivor benefits? So you could set it up to get a survivor benefit, but then you get less money up front in order to pay. Well, what if the beneficiary passes away before you? And then you still get it, but you're getting the reduced amount throughout the course of retirement. And then it goes, what if we both pass away by a certain time? Well, then you could do a period certain as well, but then that also reduces the benefit that you're going to get. So it's just like, okay, tell me when you're going to pass away, and let's see if this is how we could fix it, right? But you also, this is such a crucial thing, and I'm going to slow it down to talk through it. You have to, if you're going to make this decision on your own and not bring in a professional, you have to analyze the annual pension notice before you make your decision on taking the lump sum versus the pension. And if you're interested, you got to take a look at this. This was crazy. MAPS 21 was a new regulation that came out in 2021. I'm showing my age here, Andy. But it changed how pension companies could change their accounting measures on their interest rates within the pensions. And so I saw pensions that were underfunded, like they have too much money going out to support it. And it was depleted over time with the pension trust fund. But through the accounting changes, it showed that they were rightly funded and even surplus funded. Now, okay, they changed the rules so that it could look like it's something all of a sudden is looking better than it really was before. So why did the pension company, now the pension companies, they have a choice to show you both. Hey, this is MAPS 21 and this is pre-MAPS 21. So you can see it and give you that level of transparency. But if they only show you one and you see in the bylaws that it's under MAPS 21 accounting, isn't that something that you should be aware of before you make the decision? Because then it comes down to the validity of, can that pension actually pay you throughout the course of your lifetime or you and your spouse's lifetime? Can that be the case? And if not, what happens then? Mm-hmm. Right? These are things that come on the pension side.
Yeah, Andy, and I would add
yes,
to, you had a really good point there, Jason. If you're out there and you're like, you want to go down this path alone, like, first rule is don't. Right? I mean, you're making it. Here's the slow down version for me real quick. You're making a decision around whether it's taking your Social Security benefit or taking your pension benefit that is typically or usually irreversible. Once you start it, there's no way of going back. And do you want to put that massive decision on your own shoulders to make sure that it works without asking questions? And that's the best part about our program, all right, Jason, is that if you go to clearpicturefinancial.com and you can check out all of our past reasons and the whys, but it also gives you an opportunity. If you're out there making this decision and you're like, I need someone else who can look at that, that's what we do, right? Every single day. And here's the best part is that we don't charge for the initial conversation. So have a conversation. What's it worth? 30 minutes of your time to either justify or verify your decision, or to maybe say, wow, I need a little bit more guidance and direction. I've seen too many clients elect benefits and then not be able to fix them until later, and then it's impacted their entire forecast. It puts a lot more stress on the portfolio. Going back to how we kicked this off, if you don't make the right decision up front and you don't take into account inflation and all these other factors that are changing on certain withdrawal rules, what ends up happening is that when you're 75 or 85 and you're in the later years and your healthcare goes up, you don't have strategies. Your portfolio reliance goes through the roof. And then us advisors have to say, I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we need to back down our spending now. You can't go take that trip to see your granddaughter that was recently born because we don't have the comfort and the assurance that the longevity is going to match, all because you made a decision when you were 62, 3, or 4. So I'm telling you, I can't urge it enough. This is what we specialize in, and I'm not doing it. We don't use this podcast any more than a value add, but this is the one that I want to reach to the screen and I want to just like grab you on your shoulders, nice and friendly, and say, let's talk. because this is a big one, and it all drives to that protected income. Because we want a lot of it, but we want to do it to where it's not going to impact you later tomorrow. Sorry, my point.
Yeah, there's no redos on these pension decisions. Social Security, there could be a redo depending on how quickly you do it. And there's times where I had to have a client. So it's interesting. Like this new couple I'm working with, they came in after they claimed their Social Security. But they didn't tell me that. They just gave me the Social Security statements to show me what it would be. And I said, hey, based off of our conversations in our meeting, they hired me. I said, this is how I want you to do claiming of their Social Security, and here are the reasons why. And they're like, oh my gosh, I just did this. I just claimed it. It started 3 months ago. I was like, okay, well, we could do a redo. Since you just did it 3 months ago, we could pay that money back.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could then, like, we got to do this though, all right? But if they would have met me just a year later, there is no redo. So there's something of this. Well, I would like to summarize it this way. We're talking about cash after careers, okay?
Oh, that's good.
You like that? This is what we're getting at. It's like the cash that comes in from Social Security or pensions or annuities, any other things that we're going to talk about that in another podcast. But it's like, how do you make a better informed financial decision with the information that we provide here, and then taking that next step and coming in and talking with us? I'll say that's all for today's episode of 20 Minutes of Clarity. We just thank you for tuning in. And don't forget to join us next time as we continue to demystify the complex world of finance, helping you make informed decisions with confidence. Until then, keep your investments safe and your future secure.